So this building here is where the Osmonds actually lived in the 70s. They had a studio in there. They did a lot of their productions recording in there during that time as well. So this is right across the street from Brigham Young University. There's the outdoor track right there. But now it is the Museum of Mormon History. So check out this interview I have with Fernando. Quite the story feature on how English Book of Mormon was translated to Spanish. The first copy is in that building.
I am Fernando Gomez. My wife and I have created this museum from material that were left by my Aunt Consuelo back in the 1930s and 40s. So we have a complete history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here from Mexico, Central America, and a little bit from South America.
Fantastic. So I'll just follow you along there. So, okay.
You want me to just go there?
Start with those.
We started collecting back in 1991, and this is our church service. I've served 6 missions in Mexico, in Chile, in the Philippines, and here in the United States. And these are different activities of our mission call over the years.
Wow.
Okay, so come on in, I'll give you a little tour of the place. We start here in this area. These exhibit us on the colonies that were left by, they were established in the late 1800s in Mexico because of the war between Mexico and in the revolution. They were forced to come back into the U.S. And this is called Finding Refuge in El Paso. They were there, about 4,000 people that lived there for 25 years, developing quite an economy. So all of this are artifacts from that period. Over here, we have a letter from Brother McDonald, 1890, that tells them how far they go every day, who to talk to, how much it costs. And with that information, they established 9 colonies, 6 in the state of Chihuahua and 3 in the state of Sonora. They were educated people, quite labor-oriented, and they built quite an economy for themselves before the Mexican Revolution forced them out. They were talented people, you can see from here, different instruments that they played, and some of this are testimonies of the people that lived there. The ladies came out by train with their children, whatever they could bring out. The men came out by horseback, and they crossed the border into Arizona and into El Paso, Texas. These are books that were donated by the Apostle Moses Stetcher. He was in charge of the colonies at the beginning, and these books were all signed by him and donated to an institution in Mexico back in 1881. This is a Book of Mormon here. And you can see his writing when he donated those books. When they came out of Mexico, the mayor of El Paso provided transportation and other things that they needed while they were trying to decide what would come next in their lives. This is a statue of Lehi's family, donated by J. Del Morris, the sculptor. The people, some of them established their new homes in El Paso, Texas, and built the church building there in May of 1931. So this is 20 years later. Others migrated west where they had relatives, and some did return to Mexico. They're still active colony people in Mexico and in the state of Sonora. These 3 sisters, along with families like the Zúñiga Bautista, were baptized in Mexico in the late 1800s or early 20th century, and they were baptized so that they could be members of the church. But the revolution also forced them to come from Mexico into the United States, and they came all the way to Salt Lake City and established the first Spanish-speaking branch in 1922. These paintings were donated by a Mexican artist, Irene Becerril. This one is called The Three Joseph: Joseph from Egypt, Joseph Smith, and Joseph the son of Lehi, with different ordinances of the restored gospel. This is Mormon giving the place to his son Moroni, with iniquity on one side and the light of the gospel on the other side. And this is the two comings of Christ. The Old Testament says that he'll come dressed in red and every knee should bow. The first time he came in and is shown in white attire.
What about that organ?
That was donated by, it's an old organ from the late 1800s, donated by the Cutler family. And those are ladies' panchos that are made in Guatemala. Very detailed instruction as into their religious practices. This is the artist, Irene Becerril. She was a renowned artist worldwide, won several praises in Salt Lake City in the art shows. We continue this way. Mexico has grown quite a bit. This is a map of Mexico showing the 26 temples now that have been announced or constructed or in operation in Mexico, 32 missions, over 200 stakes, and about 1.5 million members. When I was a young missionary, my mission covered all of this area here up to Tepic, Nayarit. And now there's 4 different missions there. This is the cradle of Mormonism in Mexico. It's around the volcano, the Popocatépetl volcano. And this is where the small branches were established in the late 1800s and early 1900s. We've collected manuals from the 1930s and 1940s of the different organizations. And this is the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Book of Mormon, and the Doctrine and Covenants, which we repeat every 4 years in the church. This is the evolution of the magazines back in the late 1920s. It was called Evangelio Restaurado, some of the local publications, and finally it came to the Leona. Can we go that way? This next area is very interesting. It's on the Book of Mormon translation into Spanish. This is Trozos Selectos del Libro de Mormón. They were printed in 1875. There are only 100 pages of it. Contains 1st, 2nd, 3rd Nephi and the Book of Omni. These books are 150 years old now. And we're the only institution that has a copy of both the brown and the green cover in exhibit. It was done under Brigham Young, who called the translators Daniel W. Jones and Meliton Trejo. These are letters that were scrapped on the translation of the Book of Mormon in 1886. And then there's other editions of the Book of Mormon prior to 1950. We have beautiful paintings by Liz Lemon Swindle, the local artist. And one of the findings that we made was the newspapers in Mexico that were published as early as 1844. Like this one, the Diario Oficial. It gives the testimony of the 3 and 8 witnesses of the Book of Mormon back in 1858. Yet the Book of Mormon was not translated until 1875. Behind you is El Universal from 1854. Talks about the vision of the prophet. And, this is history of Argentina that started in 1925, but it didn't take hold until the late 1950s and 60s. These are some items that were donated by a family from Logan. They're postcards from the 1800s sent from Mexico City to Logan, Utah. This exhibit shows the translation of the Book of Mormon. Meliton Trejo and James Zebulon Stewart are making that first translation that I showed you before. And this comes alive. They talk to each other and translate the first book. We've collected over 6,000 pictures of different individuals and activities of the church in Mexico. This is a picture of 1890 local missionaries that were called to help the Anglo elders before the closure of the first attempt to teach the gospel in Mexico. The church in Mexico was very primitive at the beginning. The brethren had to make their own houses to be able to have services. And also they had to make furniture so that they could function as a church. Now coming here, this is more information. The museum started the museum because of this picture. This is my father, Raimundo Gomez, and this is his sister, my Aunt Consuelo. My grandmother met the missionaries in 1923, and she was a school teacher by education, so she kept a humble collection of the beginnings of the church in Mexico. And when she died, that was our inheritance. And over the last 35 years, we have grown the collection and we exhibit all of the material that we collect. Then there's more beautiful pictures here that you can see of different. This is a conference in Cuernavaca. This is a Relief Society in Mexico in the 1911 period. And this is Puebla, the first members and First Lady missionaries that went to Mexico to preach the gospel. This area represents a meeting that took place in 1901 with the missionary Emmon Tenney. All of the furniture that you can see here, the piano, the pulpit, the sacrament table, the benches, were used in Mexico in the 1920s and 1930s. The benches are from Puebla. The sacrament table is from San Marcos Hidalgo. The pulpit is from San Pedro Martir, as well as the piano. So this is an exhibit that comes alive, and Elder Tenney gives a testimony of the restoration in Mexico City back in 1901.
Does it still work? Does the thing still work?
Yeah.
Oh.
What do you mean it works?
You said they come alive and they actually talk?
Yeah, they talk.
Can we see that, or is that not working?
Well, no, we can try
We
it.
should do that afterwards. Should we go through everything and then maybe turn that on?
So you can see the brethren had to make their own sacrament trays, and they used the little glasses back in there because there was no plastic or cardboard back then. We'll let this play out. You ready? Show you this. This is in minutes of a meeting in Monterrey, Mexico in 1923. It's recording the service that was taking place on that particular day. And you can see on this screen how we've been able to take the words out of the page and create a document that you can actually read. This is another exhibit with the first Mexican that we know of that comes to Salt Lake City in 1880 and talks with John Taylor for several hours. This is his granddaughter. She plays the piano, and then the visitor also plays the piano after they had lunch in the home of the prophet John Taylor. This is an original newspaper that talks about the Mormons back in January 5 of 1890, called El Siglo XIX. And this is the first genealogy book that went to Mexico in the 1920s, and people were shown how to write their names and dates and so on and so forth. Some of the work from this book was done in the Salt Lake Temple back in the 1920s. This picture is the first building the church built in Mexico in the late 1930s. It's called Ermita. It's in the city of Mexico. And is the first conference with the prophet in Mexico, George Albert Smith. Basically the number of members in Mexico in 1946. And this little fellow right here, that's me. I was 6 years old. My brother Richard, my sister Elvia, my mother, and my younger sister at that time.
Point to you again.
What?
Point to you. Did I see right there?
My father was the photographer. That's his camera there. So he didn't come out in the picture.
That was your father that took that picture?
Yep.
Wow.
These are the first hymn books, Doctrine and Covenant, and some of the diaries. So that's basically the tour.
Wow, this is cool. We'll get a nice little view of the room. Wow, great.
Now, you want to see the activity of the three?
Yeah, that'd be great. So where's the best place to be to watch that?
Well, come over to this first. We'll start with this one here.
Okay.
And you can take it. Now let me just show you that. Let me explain to you first. The room will be like this. And then they'll light up and they'll talk.
Okay.
Okay? So let's see if I can get it started.
Did we get the approval?
Yes, we can move forward with the translation. In fact, Brother Smith, the church historian, said the translation we made of Spencer's letters from English into Spanish and then back again into English was better than Spencer's original. President Young sends his congratulations and his confidence in our ability to start translating.
But where will the money come from to do the printing?
Don't worry. President Young has handwritten this letter inviting the saints to help fund the translation. In just a short time, we have already raised the $500 needed, thanks to hundreds of church members who have contributed.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, should we get started?
The year was 1875. President Brigham Young had just approved the translation of 100 pages from the Book of Mormon into Spanish. Daniel W. Jones was preparing for a mission to Mexico where he would take the newly printed books with him to distribute amongst the people. Helping Jones translate the book was Meliton Trejo, a recent convert to the church who moved to Utah following a dream he had while a member of the Spanish Army in the Philippine Islands.
Brother Stewart, I am feeling the weight of the task before us today. Having already helped to translate the first 100 pages with Brother Jones, I can tell you this is no easy task.
It is humbling for me to think that approximately 60 years ago, the prophet Joseph and his scribes, Martin Harris, Oliver Cowdery, and sometimes Emma Smith, sat together just like we're doing today to translate this book from plates of gold.
The year is now 1886, and Meliton Trejo and James Z. Stewart have been assigned to finish the first translation of the entire Book of Mormon from English into Spanish. The translation takes place in this house, located in Logan, Utah. Translated originally from Reformed Egyptian by the prophet Joseph Smith in the late 1820s, this record has been translated already into 7 other languages, including Danish, French, Welsh, German, Italian, Hawaiian, and Swedish. But the time has come for it to be translated in its entirety for the Spanish-speaking people of the world.
This is a daunting task, but I feel that it fails in comparison to the sacrifices which have already been made to preserve this sacred record.
From Joseph Smith to Brigham Young and the many saints who carried the message of the restored gospel across the plains, so many sacrifices.
1844. Mormon prophet Joseph Smith and others are taken to Carthage jail, where they are eventually shot and killed. News travels from Illinois to Mexico City quickly. Newspapers in Mexico begin to publish the story, including bits and pieces of the history and doctrine of Mormonism. Some reports are accurate, others are not, including this article in El Siglo XIX, dated July 27th, 30 days after the martyrdom of the prophet, which states, In St. Louis, the Mormon prophets Joseph and Hyrum Smith have resulted dead during an uprising that was formed to liberate them from prison. As the saints are driven west, further reports circulate about the Mormons, including this article from El Monitor on November 26, 1845, which says, "This new religious sect, the Mormons, reveals the extent of worry they have placed upon the American government. The situation suggests that the new sect to migrate to the California, Mexican territory." And this article from El Registro Oficial on December 14, 1845, which states that the Mormons now number more than 100,000, with a strong army that is causing the American Union to consider serious fears. Then, in 1848, the Daily American Star publishes in Mexico 2 articles detailing the progress of the saints. We learn that the country selected for the habitation of the Mormons is about 20 miles east of the Great Salt Lake. The Mormons have formed a settlement and intend building a city. By 1854, newspapers in Mexico were interested in publishing news that went beyond the trials and tribulations of the Mormon people. They began instead to talk of their religious journey and beliefs. Like this article published by El Universal in July of 1854, which tells the story of the Joseph
Many
Smith.
successive revelations were announced to him, telling the high mission that the Almighty was conferring on him. The first time he said, "A bright light above my head appeared and engulfed all of my body." In the second revelation, he discovered the new Messiah, and that the sons of America were the remnant of the sons of Israel. Finally, in the third revelation that took place in 1823, he was shown the place where the mysterious archives were located. They were engraved on gold plates and enclosed in a rock box. The total of these plates contained the Book of the Law, signed by Mormon, the last Indian prophet.
And then the reporter mentions that the translation took 3 years and contained 888 pages.
It's a big book.
Not that big. Other reports, like Diario Oficial later that year, explained how the Book of Mormon was divided into 2 parts.
Here, let me see that. The first refers to the history of the Nephites, descendants of the tribe of Joseph, starting from their departure from Jerusalem en route to the Americas under the leadership of Nephi, and details the adventure, their wars and degradation up to their destruction close to Cumorah in the state of New York, where Smith found a place. The second part of the history is that of the Jaredites, another nation that came to America after the construction of the Tower of Babel. Very interesting. They got it basically right.
And then they even published the names of all the books contained in the Book of
Well,
Mormon.
look at that. Nephi, Mosiah, Elma, Helaman, Moroni. They're all there. This is exciting.
Yes, and then 4 years later, in 1858, Diario Oficial published the testimonies of the 3 and 8 witnesses, so the people of Mexico could read the first-hand accounts from men who actually saw and held the gold
It
plates.
seems the Lord has been preparing the people of Latin America for the arrival of the Book of Mormon for many years.
Yes, he has. From the darkest hours in church history to the triumphant spirit of the pioneers who settled Salt Lake City, our stories have become a light around the globe. People who wouldn't, perhaps, have been interested in knowing who we are have begun to inquire about our heritage, our beliefs. Oh my, where has the time gone today?
We have lots of work ahead, so we probably ought to get started.
Let us continue with the translation of the 11th chapter of 3rd Nephi.
Please, begin when you are ready.
And it came to pass that as he stretched forth his hand
la mano
and spake unto the people, saying,
y habló al pueblo, diciendo,
Behold,
He aquí,
I am Jesus
yo soy
Christ,
Jesucristo,
whom the prophets testified shall come into the world. And behold, I am the light and the life of the world. And it came to pass that when Jesus had spoken these words, the whole multitude fell to the earth, for they remembered that it had been prophesied among them that Christ should show himself unto them after his ascension into heaven. And it came to pass that the Lord spake unto them, saying,